1953. A 15-year-old boy tries out for the high school football team. Due to his small size and thin frame, he doesn't make the cut. Devastated, he joins the track team instead. At the time, nobody thought much about this 1-mile distance runner because they had no idea that one day he would change the face of sports by building one of the most successful brands in the history of the world. Fast forward a few decades later, and this boy is Phil Knight, the co-founder of Nike. This is the story of how one wayward boy from Oregon went on to be the world's largest supplier of athletic shoes and apparel. Our story begins in 1938, as a lawyer named William Knight and his wife Loda give birth to their son Philip. William was a domineering father who always encouraged his son to push his limits. When Phil attended Cleveland High School in Portland, he developed a love of running and became a key member of the track team. Phil continued to run track in college at the University of Oregon in Eugene, and it would be on that team that a partnership would change sports as we know it. It was Phil's track coach, Bill Bowerman, who would become his mentor, business partner, and co-founder. 1959. Phil graduated college with a degree in journalism, but he was lost. Still confused on what to do in life, he enlisted in the Army. After only 1 year of service, he enrolled in the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. It was here that Phil started to see his future. One of the graduate courses he took was Frank Schallenberger's Small Business class. The final assignment was to invent a new business. Phil came up with a business plan that sold sports shoes. Seeing how Japanese companies were disrupting the electronics world with smaller and more powerful products, Phil wrote his thesis and titled it, "Can Japanese sports shoes do to German sports shoes what Japanese cameras did to German cameras?" It was in doing the research that Phil realized that his purpose in life was to create a business dealing in shoes. 1962. Phil graduated with a master's degree and embarked on a trip around the world. He visited Japan, where he discovered the Tiger brand running shoes, which were manufactured by the Onitsuka company. Phil was highly impressed with the high quality and low cost of the shoes, and quickly secured a distribution contract with the company. On his return, Phil met up with his old coach and mentor Bill Bowerman. Bowerman was repairing track shoes at the University of Oregon and asked Phil to help. It was here that they discussed the idea of forming a partnership to distribute shoes in America. They called their partnership Blue Ribbon Sports and had a total investment of $500. Bill was in charge of designing the shoes, while Phil handled the sales. Bill Bowerman was obsessed with shaving weight off his athletes' running shoes. He believed that custom-made shoes would weigh less on the feet of his runners and cut down on blisters, and reduce the overall drag on the energy for every ounce he could remove from the shoe. By his estimation, removing just 1 ounce from the shoe, based on a 6-foot gait for a runner, would translate into a reduction of 55 pounds of lift over a 1-mile span. 1964. The first shoe produced by Blue Ribbon Sports was called the 966, and it retailed for $3.95. Phil sold it out of the back of his truck. Their first big sale came when track coach Bill Bowerman convinced the University of Oregon's track team to wear their shoes. They generated money through sales to University of Oregon athletes and coaches, but they soon realized they were in over their heads. Bill and Phil quickly realized that there was no way to expand their business because they had no manufacturing facility. They had no ability to mass produce the shoes and deliver them to customers, so they took a big risk. They traveled to New York City to visit the American Shoe Company, the largest manufacturer of athletic footwear at the time. They had factories in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York City. Bill and Phil wanted to rent out the New York City factory and hire designers and engineers who worked there. They wanted to use the equipment and materials from the American Shoe Company to make their shoes. Eventually, the deal was made, and Blue Ribbon Sports was given access to the factory. However, in the negotiation, the American Shoe Company owned the designs for the shoes, and to ensure that Bill and Phil didn't try to sidestep them, the contract stated that Blue Ribbon Shoes could sell shoes only to colleges and universities. 1967. Bill and Phil were growing out of their existing deals with shoe manufacturers. They wanted to sell their shoes to the public and sports teams. They wanted to design products that the world's top athletes would want to use. It was here they decided, since they couldn't get out of their contracts, they needed to form a new shoe company. Jeff Johnson, a friend of Phil Knight and an employee of Blue Ribbon Sports, suggested naming the new company Nike, after the Greek winged goddess of victory. Phil Knight made acquaintances with Olympic runners, including Steve Prefontaine, hoping he would influence others to try his products. At the Olympics time trials, the Nike Cortez debuted, and it was an instant hit. Phil and Bill's efforts paid off, and this new shoe company, Nike, was on the map. 1972. Nike was a promising shoe company, but Phil needed to distinguish themselves from other sports brands. A young designer named Carolyn Davison came up with the idea of putting a swoosh logo on the back of the shoes. The swoosh was inspired by the sight of a high-winged 747 jet flying over Davidson's house. She was paid $35 for the design. The name Nike was printed on the side so that the swoosh wouldn't be a standalone symbol. When Phil saw the swoosh, he said, "I don't love it, but it will grow on me." Phil had an idea, an ingenious, visionary idea. He felt that if he could have athletes wear his shoes, it would be better than any money spent on advertising. And in 1972, Romanian tennis player Eileen Natasi became the first athlete to sign an endorsement with Nike. And this would start a long line of athletes wearing Nike brand shoes. While Nike was a popular athletic shoe in the 70s, it wasn't until the 1980s, when Phil formed a partnership with a young new basketball player for the Chicago Bulls named Michael Jordon, that the company really became a household name. Phil created a line of sneakers named after Michael, the Air Jordan, and sold it for an unheard of price of $65. No company dared charge a high price for a sneaker, but thanks to the phenomenal success of Michael Jordan, the Air Jordan became the world's must-have shoe, and suddenly athletic shoes were a new fashion accessory. Phil's price gamble paid off. Consumers were drawn to the style and design of the shoe, and they became the best-selling basketball shoe in history. It was a huge win for Nike, who had hit the jackpot with the now famous athlete. With the success of athletic shoes, Nike decided to produce a wide range of sports equipment and apparel. 1980, Nike stock went public with an IPO of 18 cents a share. Afterwards, Nike stock was worth almost 1,000 times that price. The 1990s saw a shift in the athletic shoe industry. With the rise of Adidas, Reeboks, and New Balance, Nike's sales began to drop. The company was also affected by a series of bad publicity and marketing mistakes. They had to deal with the Michael Jordan gambling scandal, a lawsuit from the University of Oregon over the swoosh trademark, and the controversial ad campaign featuring tennis star Monica Seles. Nike was now facing bankruptcy, and Phil Knight decided to step down from management and become chairman of the board. He was replaced by Phil Knight, his son. His son, Phil Knight, began to make drastic changes to the company, including the implementation of no swear policy and restructuring of the marketing team. By 2002, Nike surpassed Reeboks as the top sports apparel brand in the world. It was a huge accomplishment for the company, and it was made possible by Phil Knight. Nike continued to strike gold with celebrity endorsements, signing contracts with star athletes like Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James at the early stages of their career. Knight resigned as Nike CEO in 2004. Bill Bowerman reduced his role in the company in the late 70s and began passing down his stake in the company to other employees shortly before the IPO launched. He died in 1999 at the age of 88. Today, Phil Knight is worth over $60 billion, and he has created foundations and institutes all over the world, as well as his own hometown. It's estimated that Phil Knight is the most generous philanthropist in Oregon history. His lifetime gifts now approach $2 billion. Knight established endowments in all areas of the university. In 2016, Phil Knight donated $500 million for a new laboratory and research science complex. Phil Knight helped fund the renovation of the Hayward Field, a track and field stadium at the university where he ran track as a student. The project was estimated to cost $270 million. When you think of Nike, there are a few iconic images that come to mind. The swoosh logo on the side of a sneaker, a basketball player dunking with a pair of Air Jordan sneakers, a marathon runner crossing the finish line with Air Pegasus shoes. These are just a few examples of how far the company has come since its humble beginnings as a track shoe repair shop in Eugene. It is said that more Nike shoes have been sold than there are people on Earth. Nike has become a cultural icon and arguably the most recognized athletic brand in the world. Now it's your turn to tell us your thoughts on the story of Phil Knight and the creation of Nike. Make sure to subscribe and like this video. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.